Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Somich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sondhe. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
Welcome to Stress-Free Living. I'm Ray Somich. I'd like to introduce everybody to my dear friend, co-host, colleague, Ratanjit Sondhe. Ratanjit, how are you this fine day?
I'm wonderful, Ray. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And it's so enjoyable to get together on a regular basis, not only with you, and you make it all worthwhile, just having you there with me, but when we also get the bonus of having some wonderful friends that join us on our YouTube, what ends up going on YouTube, but it's done live on Zoom. Technology today is so amazing that we are able to interact with people from across the country and sometimes from around the world. Very special, isn't it, Ratanjit, to have all of these people with us?
Yeah, wonderful. Gosh, we are, while seeing their faces, it feels like we're having a real live conversation with them.
I know, like they're in our kitchen over a cup of coffee. So that's really nice to have them with us. And we invite all of you too, for our radio audience. If you would like to become part of our Zoom call, we can be happy to send you that link so you can join us and interact with us before and after the show, sometimes even for a minute or two during the show when we go to a commercial break. If you are unable to catch us live, you also can go out to our official YouTube radio channel, which is called Stress-Free Living Radio. We've got 40 programs up there right now, and we're in the process of adding some additional ones. So please feel free to join us that way and share those with your friends, and you can subscribe. And when you do subscribe, what happens is anytime that we post a new show, you are notified in email that a new show is up there, so you are able to go out there and watch any of the new shows that we post. Ratanjit, I'm excited about this topic, because I think if there's one thing that most of us are guilty of, almost everybody, is judging. I think it's almost a pastime for us. We don't even mean to do it, but we encounter other people over the course of the day, or we have our friends and our family, and yet suddenly we find ourselves saying, well, gee, she did that or he did that, and I wouldn't do that. They shouldn't have done that. I can't believe they did that. Whatever the case may be, it just kind of comes out of us, even for people we love, even those that are close to us. We find ourselves without usually all the facts, without usually really knowing what caused them to do what they did, we judge. And so the topic today is, does judging help or harm? And the reason I'm intrigued by that is that I think that could be such a universal topic. Does it help or harm our relationships? Does it help or harm our being able to have friends and family and the tightness, the closeness of them? Does it help or harm us in terms of how we interact with others, how we climb the social ladder, the professional ladder, become more successful in the world? Does it help or harm us in terms of how we feel about ourselves at night? When we put our head down on the pillow, are we able to sleep less soundly or more soundly because we've gotten that off our chest and we've made that evaluation? There just seems to be so many angles to this question. And I am curious. My gut feeling is it harms us, but is there some value to it as well? Is there some conscience clearing? Is there some positioning that we have in life that it helps us? So great topic today. I'm intrigued by all of your answers. I'm going to be quiet now and just listen to you. Does judging help or harm, Ratanjit?
Well, before the best way to enter this topic is we have to distinguish between judgment and judging. We always have to have, when we respect people with good judgment, don't we? So
Yes.
that person has good judgment. But we don't like people who judge. So what is the distinction between these two?
It's a great question.
Yeah, judgment is a gift given to us because as a human being, I have to have a judgment whether I go outside, what do I do, whether it's going to harm me or it's going to help me. So evaluation is judgment. Evaluation is constantly required. Evaluation is more scientific term. So you are constantly evaluating. That means you are not concluding. You are constantly finding out the truth. It's a search for truth is what that leads to. But judging comes through emotion. Judging comes through our ego. Judging is, I'm better than him. We judge people instantly. Oh, is he going to be or she going to be good for me, or is that person going to help me or going to harm me? Or so that those are also because they're part of evaluating, but it's evaluation through emotions. They're not total facts. And judging is conclusive. We have judged you are a bad person or you are a good person. We don't leave room for consistently evaluating. So that is the core difference. I think you're looking at questions.
Well, yeah. I like very much how you redefine terms that I've always accepted one way or another. You open my mind to new considerations. But I have to believe that if I did look up in the dictionary judgment, it would say, the act of judging, or a finality to judging would be the judgment. So I don't know if the distinction that we're making there, I totally get what you're saying, but I think we're kind of playing with the words a little bit. Yes. And because maybe what I'm hearing is that if judgment is done to find the truth, then judging is good. If judging is based on emotion and truth is not in the picture, judging is not so good. I mean, is that maybe a fairer way of...
See, when you are looking at dictionary, finding the judgment, you are looking at the legal term. What is judge has given a judgment.
Right.
But there is another side of this same word, judgment. Do you have good judgments? Whether you are able to judge things better. When you are evaluating, you are in a much different way. Evaluating is neutral, objective. So you are trying to find, and whereas judging somebody is generally emotional. So that's the key difference. On one side, we are using our brain to evaluate, our mind to evaluate what that person, and there is another side of it, which we are going to get into it in a later stage of our show. And where these two elements are directed by. When we are judging, see, look at our human body. Human body is understanding that it is going to be harmed by heat, it's going to be harmed by very, very cold, or if you take a bitter thing, it is poisonous, or something is falling on you, it's going to hurt you. So you have to take instant judgment. So in one sense, when we look at anything, we instantly judge whether it's going to harm us or it's not going to harm us. It's going to benefit us or not going to benefit us. This is natural in the human body mode, because otherwise we cannot exist. So we have to, for every instant, whatever we see, whatever we hear, we instantly make a judgment call. So when you hear a sound, suddenly a boom happened. So what happened? So your mind suddenly says, was it something fell on our house, or what happened? Why there was a sound? So all our five senses give us information, and moment to moment, we make that decision. But then we go on evaluation. When a sound comes, then I go out and see what happened. So initially, what my mind thought may not be true. So you have this gift of constantly concluding. If you do not conclude any of the information coming to you, you cannot survive in life.
You know, when you were talking about a judgment being made in the legal process, I think this is noteworthy. When you go before a judge, when there's a single judge, the judge is not supposed to include emotion. They're just supposed to discern the facts and deliberate relative to the law and make a decision. And most judges are very, very good at that. They really do not let emotion get in the way. They simply say, you know, this is what happened, and this is what the law says, so this is my verdict. When it comes to a jury trial, it has been very well known that that is more about reaching the members of the jury emotionally, connecting to them so that they understand what happened and what your position is and why you did it or didn't do it, whatever the case may be. So emotion seems to be a big part of judging in that case. In the judge case, it's not allowed to be. It's not supposed to be. I don't think you can separate it completely, but it's much more about the facts. So when we go back to judging and the term of that, even when you say that we judge if something's going to hurt us, there's some emotion in there. I mean, I don't want to be cold outside if it's 0 degrees. So my emotions say you don't want to be cold, put a coat on when you're going outside. Or if it's snowing like crazy and you know that you could drive and get hurt, get in an accident, that's emotional. That's, you know, I don't want to smash my car up, so I'm not going to drive during a blizzard. Don't you think that emotion is a part of judging by default? I mean, we are who we are, including our emotions.
Well, you're right. See, even jury is first educated. So you have been selected as a jury member. Please base your judgment on the facts. So you try to direct them to hold your judgments before all the facts are presented. So even when they sit jury members, there is a lot of facts which they decide on. Of course, they are not as trained as a judges to disconnect from the emotions completely. And we have constantly a mind, which is, you cannot totally segregate emotions, right? We are part of emotion. Emotions are also generated through the fact channel. So if somebody is making good comments to me, so they are reaching my emotional side. When they are making bad comments, they're also reaching my emotional side, which is connected to my ego, my self-worth, my evaluation through my ego. So my ego is hurt through if somebody passes a judgment. Ego is also elevated if somebody makes a good comment about me. So if we train ourselves, there are two sides of it. One side is receiving somebody's judgment or somebody's judging you. Other side, you are judging others.
Right.
So now, when somebody else is judging you, you have to have a clear mind of who you are. So all those criticisms and praises do not affect you. So that is so important. And the other side is when we are making comments to others, we have to make sure that we do not offend them by making a judgment, because we forever cannot have all the facts in front of us, why someone feels the way they feel. And that is why we are not given all the facts to judge others. So that is why we should hold our judgments.
The two scenarios you just related are, I think most people would say they're impossible. When we are judged by somebody else, when we know that they have evaluated us and made a decision about us, maybe it's a really good decision. Maybe they say you're tremendous, and that's one thing, but most people don't judge positively that way. Most of the time we're hearing the negatives. I mean, it's really hard not to be offended by that judgment. It's really hard not to be, concerned about what other people think about us. And then on the other side, when we're judging others, it's really hard for us to put it in a perspective, in a presentation that doesn't hurt them. I mean, the fact is we're saying things, getting them off our chest and making an evaluation. And many times those judgments do harm relationships. They do end friendships, they end marriages, whatever it might be, because we've been open and honest with how we feel. I mean, those are what you just touched on there is the very core of this topic in my mind, is the honesty that comes with judging, whether we are the recipient of it or whether we're the giver of it, is you think honesty and truth are good, but sometimes they could be very, very damaging. I mean, somebody who judges me and they say something nasty about me, it's hard for me to overcome that and be willing to still consider them a friend if they've just said something bad about me.
You see, what we have learned is these are again habits we form. There are people who constantly give opinions. Say, I don't like this, and you have done bad or you have done good and all that. So they take a pride in it that I can decide. And again, it also depends on your position. If you are a CEO of a company, and because you are the chief officer of the company, does it give you right to criticize others? Does it give you right to pick on others? Because your subordinate may not be able to, in a position, to reciprocate or say they have to keep quiet because they have to preserve their job. But what you are doing is you are indirectly diminishing their performance. You are minimizing them. And a lot of times it is a thought that if I criticize somebody, that person is going to become better. But we don't realize that no matter how we criticize somebody, it really affects their emotional being. We have to bring goodness out of people. because every human being is capable of doing better, but they cannot do better if you continuously judge them. So the best way for motivating an employee, for a subordinate, is to catch them doing the right things first and make that very pointed comment that, look, George, what you have done in this report, you have brought out these points very crisply. Not that, oh, you have done a great job. That does not get you anything. But if you pinpoint clearly why that report is better, that will elevate that person. And then at that same time, you can say, you know, if you put that kind of effort in everything else, nobody will be able to beat you. And that is how you motivate others. But that is, if we keep our ego aside and do not, typically, I want to feel superior. That is always a problem with all of us human beings. And one of the easiest way to feel superior is to criticize others, to condemn others, to find them at their weakest points. But that does not make any good relationship. It actually undermines you in a long run, because it's all about having good relationship, having good emotional deposit with others, which gives you enormous capabilities through cooperations, through collaborations with others.
We need to take a break, Ratanjit. We're talking today about judging, and we've just started the talk here today. We've brought up so many different variations and different paths that we can go on with. Where I want to come back, Ratanjit, is the intent. And I think that's what you were just kind of talking about. What is the intent of the judging? We all do it. I mean, we're not going to stop judging, but what is the intent behind it? What are we trying to do? Are we trying to help people or trying to help ourselves? Are we trying to make, you know, I'm okay, you're okay, that whole thing that was so popular for a while? Do I just judge so that I can feel better about myself, knowing that I'm hurting other people? What is the intent, and how does that really fit into the whole idea of judging? And so many other thoughts and questions that we're going to talk about on this edition of Stress Free Living. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. All right. We have a few great guests here with us here today. Pierre joined us.
Hi, Pierre.
Before we get started,
Good morning.
If anybody would like to have a comment or a question, please do. Please go ahead.
No, it's great to be with you guys. I always enjoy the discussion. I think it's pretty riveting. But Mr. Sondhe, I think you're absolutely right. I think to me is when you're working with folks and you're trying to you have to earn the right to tell someone that they're doing something wrong. And you earn that right by actually first recognizing all the good things in people that they're doing. Absolutely. Before you can actually go and tell them that, in your opinion, by the way, that they're doing something that's not up to you, to your specs or to your specifications or to your expectations. So you're absolutely right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have probably 30 seconds left. If either of our other guests have anything to add. Thanks, Pierre. Doctor, you look like you want to say something.
Sure. So I look at judgment as a feedback, right? So I think it's useful, but then at the end, do we twist it and turn it into a biased judgment? And then the second component is that, once you got the truthful feedback, some things are sensitive, some things hurt. And I personally, I think you've already touched on it. Empathy is important. Can we be in their shoes?
Yes.
Right. And as you very well pointed out, that we don't always imagine everything that is going on with the other person. And
we are back on Stress Free Living. As we tell you all the time, we have wonderful engagement with our Zoom audience during the breaks, and we invite you to be part of that. We thank them for their great comments and questions. And I think the very last thing that one of our great guests just said, Ratanjit, I'm going to divert from what I had really just talked about. He used the word empathy in our conversation. And boy, that does seem to be so appropriate in this. When we are judging, evaluating, criticizing even, if we do it with empathy, that really changes everything, doesn't it? Doesn't that put everything in the proper perspective if we have empathy?
Absolutely. See, empathy only comes to you when you consider others as part of us. Oneness, when we understand oneness, means that the whole universe is enlivened by the same powerful force. So although we see each one differently, but our success comes through collective force. So ultimately, we talk about on this program constantly, our purpose of life is to add value. To who? To the bigger one, to our society, to our environment. And how do we add value? Through our each individual components, each person. So we collectively add higher value to the universe. So as understanding that purpose, I have to constantly elevate the capabilities and capacities of everyone around me and also within me. So my purpose of evaluation is to help somebody elevate themselves. So once I have the empathy, then I do not criticize them at the moment. You have to pick a right moment to criticize. You have to have the entry point that they understand your purpose is to elevate them. Your purpose is not to criticize them. But how do you elevate until you make them realize some of the shortfalls of what they are doing? So that requires, emotional deposit with other person. You have to also catch them doing certain good things before you give them the advice that they can improve on these other things. But it should not be as a criticism. It should be as a suggestion to improve.
One of our other guests used the phrase that you have to earn the right to tell them that, and to judge them or to criticize them or whatever. You have to earn that right to do that. And I think that fits in again with the empathy thought. If we're so quick to judge, we enjoy judging. Let's be honest. Most of us enjoy critiquing others.
Our ego is our immediate high. When I make somebody else feel lower, artificially, I immediately feel better.
That's definitely part of it. I know that happens. But even when we just think we're doing our job, we just think that we're being critical of others, maybe in the workplace or with our family, with our kids, with our siblings, whatever it is, we think that we're adding value. Maybe we're, fooling ourselves because we really aren't, but we think that we are making a difference if we tell people what we think about what they did or how we're trying to help them be a better person. We kind of put that in that framework. So we act on things from that perspective, I think, a lot. But I think the idea of adding empathy is so critical. I'm so glad that that was brought up today, because I think every word that we would use, every tone that we would take, if we pictured ourselves receiving that judgment, receiving that criticism, receiving those words, even of praise, okay? We've been always talking negative on the judgment, but even if we said, how would I take this if those words were given to me, really changes the tone and the word choice that is being used if I put myself in that recipient's shoes. And I think we're so worried about how we're going to say this, what we're going to say, that we don't really think about how they're going to receive it, how they're going to hear it, and how it's going to impact them, and how it's going to make them feel when I say those words.
Well, see, there is another side. A lot of us say, well, I'm a straightforward guy. I'm going to tell you how I feel. I don't have to. And that is, again, ego. See, we talk about empathy, Ray, and this is scientifically proven. Neuroscientists have done a study on empathy. And empathy is not something which I want to have empathy, you can have empathy. Empathy, the biggest hurdle to have empathy is pride and ego. They have done a neuroscientist study, and they find that in our brain, there are mirror neurons. Mirror means reflective. So empathy is reflection of others' pain in my brain. So mirror neuron activity helps us have empathy. But what happens is, to understand how mirror neuron work, they did a study with the audience. They had a group of people gathered and divided them into two groups based on if they want to write an essay on their successes and their achievements, what they're proud of, or they want to write an essay on their difficulties in life and what they are grateful for. And after they wrote the essay, suddenly we moved their mindset into pride on one side, and other side moved their mindset into gratefulness. And then they wired their brain to notice the movements of mirror neurons. And they were surprised to find no movements of mirror neuron when you are proud of what you have done. And in our society, every elected official, our parents, aren't you proud of what you have done? You should be proud. And we are not unknowingly disconnect or minimize the activity of mirror neurons. And we lose the capability of empathizing others. So the fundamental need, fundamental requirement to have empathy is gratefulness. Right?
Well, I was following everything you said until we just threw out that last word of gratefulness. I guess is gratefulness, is that part of empathy? I mean,
no, it's not part of empathy. Once your mind is parked in gratefulness, automatically empathy comes into you, because your mirror neuron activities there means you can see the reflection of others' feeling in your mind. Mirror means I can see the reflection of their feelings in my mind. So empathy is merely a reflection of what you are thinking in my mind. So I cannot receive that reflection if my mind is parked in, I'm proud of this. So my ego and my pride hinders me to have empathy. I can say I have empathy all I want, but you will not have empathy. And that's what you see in our society. We lack empathy in our society. We are only practice empathy when we are grateful, when we are not full of ego or pride.
Okay, so you've just, we were taking baby steps here. we were in judging 1.0, and then we added empathy that took us to 2.0, and now you've added gratefulness to go to now we're in the advanced placement of this. So I've got to reel us back in a little bit, because I was happy just bringing up empathy, and I'm grateful that our guest brought that up, because I think that's so critical. I think we can and should go on further to say what is true empathy and how do we really practice empathy, and then we can bring into the gratefulness with whole thing there. But let's be satisfied for today, because there's still so many other topics about judging and having empathy. One of the big things with that to me is the tone of our voice. I often have this conversation with my wonderful wife, is that when people are talking to each other, it's really not the words that they speak. It's really the tone of the voice when they say those words. If I could be very critical of you in a conversation, but if I do it lovingly and respectfully in my tone, you'll probably listen to it and you won't be offended, and you'll consider it.
But see, if I come, that's what happens. So supposing your spouse, if you are grateful for your spouse and you feel that gratefulness in conversation, your tone will automatically fall into place, right? When you're grateful for somebody, your tone does not go screaming. It automatically has that kindness in your tone, and you get through. So ultimately, until your mind, so if you are a CEO, if you are a boss, and you're a subordinate, if you are not grateful for that subordinate or being in your team, you will not talk to them. That means gratefulness gives you respect for that person. And respect is necessary to bring the tone in right place. And if you don't have respect, you won't have your tone reflecting that respect. And that respect, prerequisition for this respect is that you are grateful for that person in your life.
You won't let me put that, you won't let me separate that. Okay, so we're going to have to include that in today's show. I was hoping that we could, again, that advanced placement.
They're all interconnected, right? You cannot separate them. So
right.
if you are going to separate your brain from your heart, you stop functioning.
Okay, I'm buying it now. All right, so now we've got a whole lot of things that we have to get a handle on. Okay, we have to figure out.
They're not separate. They're all interconnected. They're all interconnected.
But it's, here's where I'm coming from, is that if we are all doing judging, and if we're all doing it, or not all of us, but many of us are doing it badly. Okay, we aren't doing it in a way that does help. We're doing it in a way that does harm. To go back to the very topic here, that the basic topic of the show. Yes. We're harming others, we're harming ourselves, we're harming our relationships, we're harming our ability to be stress-free, or at least reduce stress. So I'm trying to simplify it in my mind, in my approach, so that people can grasp, okay, let me do it differently. If I do have to judge, again, the first question is, do I want to judge at all? Is judging important? And is that something that I should be doing? And then secondly, if it is, then how do I do it better? So we've got one segment left, Ratanjit. I think this has been wonderful. but I still don't have those core questions answered. So when we come back from this last break, let's try to simplify this and take this over the finish line with, is it helpful or is it harmful? And if it is helpful, how do we do it better? Are you with me?
Yes.
All right, good.
Okay.
Then we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back on Stress-Free Living. Stay with us.
Thank you.
All right. Who would like to comment here? I apologize for cutting you off, Doctor, last time. I hear the music and I know we have to start.
No, right. And your associates, I mean, he indicated, so that's good.
Okay.
So I mean, I was able to say what I wanted to say, but let me add another dimension, because, you know, in academics, there's a lot of judging going on all the time. The other angle I want to bring up, Ray, is that, you know, there's an issue of security of the person who's judging, and a sense of security of the person who's receiving, right? So if I'm not secure in myself, I have a propensity to put down others. In fact, there is a very direct correlation. People who excessively judge are hiding their own insecurity, you know? And then if I am insecure, your slightest comment hurts me deeply, you know? I mean, my wound is so raw, moment you touch it, you know, I explode, right? So, I mean, there is always that issue. So now with security comes respect, right? And we don't always know. I mean, we don't know how secure we are. We don't know how secure the others are. So, you know, there is a utility in judging. There is a value adding in judging done right, right? And as you pointed out, tone matters, empathy matters, caring matters, right? And then there are unknowns.
We are back on Stress-Free Living. So grateful for all of you being with us here today and trying to wrap this topic up. Judging, does it help or does it harm? We already acknowledged that we do it. So now we have to know how we should do it. Ratanjit, let me go back to the very initial question. Does it help or does it harm? Is it something that we just know we can't do properly, so we shouldn't do it? Should we as human beings try to resist judging? Is that something that we should just say no to?
But see, when we judge a human being, that is where when we say you are a bad person, we blame that person. That is ego-based. And as one of our valued listeners said, that when we are insecure, we have higher ego. When we are secure, we are humble. And when you are insecure, you want to insult people. You want to have one up on others. You are criticizing them. You're always catching them doing wrong, so that it gives you indirect security. The same thing is the recipient. If they are insecure, they'll be hurt. So security is very, very critical. And that is why a difference between mother and father. A child is more secure with mother. That doesn't mean that mother does not criticize the kid. They love them unconditionally. Father is constantly, instead of expressing that emotion, they are always practical. They are always, look, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to do. But It is important for a father role to build a tremendous rapport with their children. And that happens by catching them doing the right things. But ultimately, Ray, by slowly telling them this is wrong and this is right, we bring a child in a proper manner. So child growing up is very insecure. And the security comes from constantly making sure that love is around them. Empathy is around them. We feel their pain. So there is a time for criticizing, and there's a time for helping them understand that they are very valuable, they are loved, they are cared for. So all these things go hand in hand. Judging is important in life, but it has to be based on evaluation. It has to be motivated by making them a higher value adding entity. Our purpose is to elevate everyone by pointing that if they did this thing correctly, they would be better off, rather than saying they are bad or they are good. We can always criticize or be critical to their actions, not critical to themselves. This is important. So we can always critique their action, but not critique them as a person. A lot of us critique, so you are not a good person, you are a bad person. And that is where the problem is. That's where the judgment, and that all comes from our ego satisfaction. I feel better because I'm insecure. All right?
Okay, so there's three, trying to bring this to some closure, there's three important things that I think I just heard you say, all three of those. Number one is that before we make a judgment, or even before we receive or after we've received judgment, because we may not know what's coming. So either before we judge others or after we are judged, the first question maybe to say is, am I doing this from a position of security? Am I evaluating this from a person of my own security or insecurity? Because if I am going to be critical of anybody and judge anybody and talk to them, I need to be honest with myself and say, am I doing this just to make myself feel better about me? Or am I doing this to truly add value to this other person's life? So that would seem to be a really major consideration before I go around judging others. Am I just doing this so that I feel better about me? And then I'm hearing, of course, the empathy, okay, putting myself in that other person's shoes. How am I going to take this? How do I need to present it? Or how do I need to feel even thinking about the person who's critiquing me, who's criticizing me? Let me put myself in their perspective. Do they really mean to be harmful to me? Do they really mean to be critical and mean to me? Or are they, do I understand where they're coming from? Maybe they're my boss and he's got his boss and he's in a tough position because he has to be the bearer of bad news, and maybe it's not his fault either. So the empathy in there. And then that third thing is what is the first time you said that today, but I really love it, is we really can never criticize the person. We have to be critical of what they did or didn't do. The quality of the work maybe, or the idea to do something is wrong, but that doesn't mean that person is bad. It doesn't mean that the person is wrong. So I think we're putting some framework here to the judging process that will help us.
See, if we remember our purpose in life, if you understand the purpose in life, then our insecurity and all that takes a second seat. Our purpose in life is to add the highest value. And every word we say, every action we take, every thought we have. So in that framework, if we are criticizing somebody, then you are not criticizing, you are helping them to add higher value. Then you can say, Ray, let me tell you how you can add higher value by doing this and this and this. So you have made a suggestion rather than saying what you have done is wrong. So you are giving them a pathway to better themselves. So that is a better way to criticize than to condemn somebody. When we condemn, we have to remember that that is always my egoic needs to condemn somebody. So that doesn't serve any purpose. I do not add the highest value. So anytime you want to say something, you want to act in any manner, you have to ask yourself whether this thought process, this word, or this action is going to add the highest value or no. So that is where our litmus test is under all circumstances.
And that makes total sense. And I think somebody as advanced as you, who has done this your whole life, all these other steps then fall into place when you simply add that question, how do I add the highest value? But I think for most of us who are on this journey that haven't done it to the level that you have, I think we need to kind of lay out these steps. I certainly need to consider at least the three things that we've just talked about. If not, maybe there's a few more. But the idea of asking myself, am I coming from a secure position? Or am I only offended by this because of my insecurity? Or am I only saying this because of my insecurity? I think that's a specific question that really is important. And I think most of us will be honest with ourselves. Security is such an important, we could do a whole show on that. That is something that within us, we know if we are secure or insecure. We know that about ourselves. We really can't fake that.
See, and ultimately, we are all insecure, Ray. It's a relative statement. The moment you are in the human body mode, you will be always insecure. It is only in the oneness mode that you are secure. Now, the last thing which I want to add is, how do you handle people who are abusive to you? You cannot change their mindset. They make comments. Remember, after 9/11, when that incident happened, third day or second day, I was at the grocery store and picking up some groceries before I went home. And a young lady in her mid-30s looks at me, and then finally he couldn't hold it within herself. She comes to me, he says, "Why don't you leave us alone, get out of this country?" And she was mistaken with my turban.
Yeah.
And at that point, how do you react? So at that point, the empathy comes in. I could feel the pain in her. This incident has created enormous insecurity in her and everybody, all of us. And I said, "Ma'am, we are all in the same boat. I am hurting as much as you are. But if by screaming at me or even by hitting at me, it gives you some relief for your pain, please do it. But we are all the same." And suddenly it quieted down. And before I knew, she broke up in tears, started crying. And then she came and hugged me. She says, "Thank you." Now, if I had said something equally harsh to her, it would have basically elevated the whole episode.
Right.
So you have to have internal security within you to cope up with all these judgments which are going to be thrown at you, and they are thrown at you because of the misinformation carried by others, because of the insecurity carried by others. So you are there to help them, not to again judge them or go on that path of ego.
Ratanjit, it is time for us to go. You know, every time I try to simplify this in human terms and better understand it, you bring another perspective to it and remind me that it isn't that simple, or it can be if we just have this oneness at the very foundation. We need to continue talking about this. I know we will in the shows to come. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and wisdom and love with all of us here today. And to all of our audience, we appreciate you being with us, listening, watching, whatever you're doing. Remember, folks, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.